19, the $80 Amish battery bank that powers a whole house for 20 years. Tesla hopes. You never build this. The ice came in around 4 in the afternoon, the kind that bends a tree branch slow and quiet until it cracks. By 6, the neighbor's porch light was gone. By 7, half the road was dark. But in the kitchen, the kettle still whistled, and the freezer on the back wall still hummed, and the lamp over the table still burned warm and yellow over a plate of cold biscuits. Out in the shed, behind a wooden door with a leather hinge, 12 heavy glass jars sat on a pine shelf. They smelled faintly like an old penny. There were no screens, no app, no fan, just a low, almost inaudible hum. The man who built that shelf paid $80 for the whole thing, and the youngest jar on it is older than his truck. If you're the kind of person who'd rather hear the plain version of a thing than the polished one, the kind who still trusts his hands more than a warranty card, then pull up a chair, I'd rather speak to 12 of you who'll actually go build something than 12,000 who just scroll past. Stick around to the end, leave a word in the comments if any of this lands, and you'll find your people here. That shed belongs to a quiet man 2 counties over. He's in his late 70s now, hands like cracked harness leather, and he hasn't paid a full electric bill since Carter was in the White House. He didn't go to school for any of it. He didn't read a manifesto. One winter, the lines went down for 9 days, and his wife was running a fever, and he decided right there at the kitchen table that he was done being billed for weather. What sits in his shed now is older than most marriages on his road, and it still does its work every night without anybody asking it to. The thing itself is ugly. That's the first honest word for it. 12 thick glass jars, each one the size of a half-gallon mason, lined up on a shelf with a copper strip running between them like a spine. Heavy, cool to the touch, a faint smell of metal and clean water. You wouldn't put it in a magazine. You wouldn't show it off to your son-in-law. There's no glowing screen telling you the state of charge. There's no humming inverter the size of a microwave. There's a wooden box, a vent slot cut up high, and a wire that runs in from a single panel on the south side of the barn roof. Most folks, when they think of going off-grid, picture a wall of black plastic, a glossy unit with a brand name. $8,000 on a contractor's invoice, plus the install, plus the permit, plus the inspection sticker. They picture an app on a phone. They picture a salesman's blue polo standing in their driveway. And then they look at the number and they sigh and they put the brochure in the drawer with the others. That's the trap. That's the whole trap right there. The price tag is the fence they built around the idea. What sits in that shed is the same idea, stripped down to its bones, its storage. That's all a battery ever was. A jar that holds electricity the way a mason jar holds beans. Patient, sealed enough, ready when you need it. The chemistry inside those jars is older than most of the houses on that road. It was figured out before the Wright brothers got off the ground. It powered telegraph stations. It powered rural telephone lines for half a century. It ran the lights in submarines. And then, somewhere along the way, the industry quietly walked away from it, not because it stopped working. That's the part nobody says out loud. It still works. It works the way a cast iron skillet still works, better than most of what replaced it, if you know how to keep it. The industry walked away because you can't sell a man a new one every 8 years if the old one is still humming. You can't run a quarterly earnings call on a battery that outlives its owner. The chemistry was abandoned on purpose, not by accident. And the word for that, when you sit with it long enough, is not progress. There's a leather shop about 30 miles from that shed, run by a plain family who don't drive cars and don't take pictures. They've had the same setup running their stitching machine since the late 70s. Same jars, same shelf. They've replaced a single cell twice in all those years. Total cost of repair across 5 decades, in their own ledger book, under $60. The man who keeps that ledger said it to me plain, with no pride in his voice, just the flat tone of somebody stating a fact. He said, "We never thought of it as saving money. We just thought of it as not throwing it away." Now think about the last battery you threw out, the cordless drill that died in the 3rd summer, the riding mower that wouldn't hold a charge past Memorial Day, the phone you replaced because the back had started to swell like a bread roll. We've all got a graveyard of these in the garage, in the junk drawer, in the back of the closet. We were told they were better, lighter, smarter. We were told a lot of things. And every 5 years, we paid for the privilege of being told again. Somewhere in that cycle, a question stopped getting asked. The question is this: if a man in a shed, on a hill, in the dark of a winter storm, can keep his lights on and his freezer humming with 12 glass jars and a single solar panel for $80 total for 40 years and counting, then what exactly are we paying $8,000 for? What's the difference made of? Is it chemistry? Is it convenience? Is it the box it comes in? Or is it something else entirely? Something that has nothing to do with the battery and everything to do with who profits when it dies? Sit with that for a minute. Because the answer is the whole reason this got buried. Every man over 50 has a drawer like this, bottom of the workbench maybe. Or that plastic tote in the garage you keep meaning to sort. Inside it, a cordless drill battery that died in year 3, a laptop brick that swelled at the seams, a cell phone from 2 presidents ago, a power tool pack that won't hold 10 minutes anymore. We bought every one of them on the promise of lifetime, or long lasting, or the new generation. And every one of them is in that drawer because the promise quietly expired. You paid for it, then you paid for it again. Then you paid for it a third time. That's not a battery. That's a subscription dressed up like a tool. The reason they die is not a mystery, and it's not bad luck, it's design. A modern lithium cell is built thin and tight, packed close to its limit, sealed shut so no hand can ever reach inside it. The walls are thin, the guts run hot, there's no way in. When something goes wrong with one cell, and something always does, the whole pack is scrap. You can't open it, you can't service it. You can't replace the one bad jar in the row. The engineers know this, the factory knows this. It's not a flaw in the design, it is the design. A battery you can't open is a battery you have to buy again. Now, the old chemistry was built the opposite way. Flooded lead acid, the kind that's been around since before the Civil War, and especially the nickel iron cell, what Thomas Edison patented back in 1901 and built for 2 decades after. Those cells were made to be opened, made to be topped up with a little distilled water once a month, the way you'd add oil to an old tractor, made to be forgiven. You could overcharge them. You could leave them sitting half dead through a hard winter. You could pull one cell out of the bank, swap in another, and the rest kept right on humming. They weren't fragile, they were patient. And patient is the word the industry forgot. I'll be honest with you about the trade. These old cells are heavy. A single jar can weigh 40 pounds. They charge slow. They lose a little more of what goes in than a lithium pack does. Call it efficiency, call it whatever you want. It's a real cost. You're not putting one of these in an electric car. You're not hanging it on the wall of an apartment. They want a basement, a shed, a corner of the barn where the temperature stays cool and the air can move. They want a man who will spend 15 minutes with them on a Sunday. That's the price of admission. And once you pay it, you don't pay much else. For a house that sits still, that trade is no trade at all. Your home doesn't need a battery that fits in a backpack. It doesn't need to charge in 20 minutes. It needs to sit there year after year and hold what you give it and give it back when the lines go down. Weight doesn't matter to a shelf. Speed doesn't matter to a freezer that runs on its own schedule. The only thing that matters is whether the lights come on when you flip the switch in February. And on that one measurement, the only measurement that actually counts, the old chemistry quietly beats the new one by a margin nobody wants to print. There's a man I knew growing up, neighbor down the gravel road from my grandfather, who kept a flooded bank in his cellar from 1978 until the day he passed. He didn't fuss with it. He didn't read books about it. First Sunday of every month after church, he'd go down with a flashlight and a turkey baster and a gallon jug of distilled water from the grocery store. He'd check the level in each jar. He'd top off what needed topping. 15 minutes, maybe 20 if he was slow that day. He outlived Carter, Reagan, both Bushes, Clinton, and most of his own teeth. The bank outlived him too. His son runs it now. If that sounds like your kind of voice, the kind that doesn't dress things up, doesn't sell you anything, doesn't pretend the old ways were perfect, but won't lie about what they did right, then you already know where you belong. There's a quiet corner of this place where folks like that gather. No noise, no hype, just plain talk about plain work. You're welcome in it. Pull up a chair, stay a while, we're not going anywhere. And the next time the lines go down on your road, you'll be glad somebody told you the part the brochure left out. Now I've walked you all the way around the thing without showing you the inside of it, and I know you're waiting on the math. You want the list. You want to know what $80 actually buys, what sits in those jars, what holds them together, where a man finds the parts, and how a figure that small can possibly be true. I'm going to give it to you straight in a minute. Item by item, dollar by dollar. with the honest hedges built in, the ones the salesman never mentions, because the price tag is real. But the price tag is not the secret. The secret is what surrounds it. Here's what sits on that shelf, and here's what it costs. 12 used cells, pulled from a retired forklift battery at an auction 2 towns over. $40 for the lot, because the warehouse was scrapping them, and the foreman was tired of looking at the pile. A length of copper bus strip from the salvage yard, $8. A wooden frame the man built himself from scrap pine off a torn-down chicken coop, no cost. A gallon jug of distilled water from the grocery, $2. A tube of terminal grease, $4. A simple charge controller from the farm supply, the kind they sell for stock tank solar pumps, $26 used on the back shelf. Total in his ledger, $80 even. Now let me hedge that figure honestly, because you deserve the whole picture. That number assumes you live where this kind of thing still turns up. It assumes you'll make 4 phone calls before you make a purchase. It assumes you'll ask the forklift mechanic in town what he does with retired cells, and that you'll wait 3 months if you have to. In a city with no contacts, ordering everything new online, the same build runs closer to $300. Still cheap, still a fraction of a wall unit. But not 80. The $80 number is real. Many homesteaders have hit it or beat it, but it's the floor, not the ceiling. Patience is half the price. The reason it lasts is not magic, it's habit. He keeps the bank in a cool corner of the shed, off the concrete, up on a wood pallet. He never lets the cells run all the way down. He pulls maybe a third of their capacity on a normal night, half on a hard one. He keeps the shed vented because flooded cells give off a little hydrogen when they charge, and any man working with them ought to know that going in. He checks the water once a month. He cleans the terminal twice a year. That's the whole maintenance schedule. 5 decades of service for the cost of an afternoon. Longevity isn't built into the cell. It's built into the Sunday. Compare that, just for a minute, to the sealed wall units sold for the price of a used car. The whole business model runs on the opposite principle. A 10-year warranty that quietly assumes a 10-year replacement. Proprietary firmware that locks out anybody but the dealer. A monitoring app that decides for you when the system needs service. You don't own that battery. You rent it from a company that knows the exact week it'll expire. That's not a slander on any one brand. That's the architecture of the whole industry. They're not in the business of keeping your lights on. They're in the business of selling you the next one when this one quits. The man's monthly ritual is the part nobody films. Sunday afternoon, after supper, he takes a small flashlight, a turkey baster from the kitchen drawer, and the jug of distilled water out to the shed. He unscrews each cap, looks inside, tops off whatever's low. The water has to be distilled. Tap water has minerals in it that'll foul the plates. Over time, 15 minutes start to finish, maybe 20 if he stops to listen to a bird. Then he closes the caps, wipes his hands on a rag, and goes back inside. That's it. That's the whole secret. 15 minutes a month against 40 years of light. Do that math on a napkin sometime. Cheap to build, cheap to fix, cheap to keep. That's the trinity that holds the whole thing up. Cheap to build because the parts are old, common, and lying around if you'll look. Cheap to fix because any single cell can be pulled and swapped for a few dollars without scrapping the rest. Cheap to keep because the only consumables are a jug of water and a tube of grease. There's no firmware update, there's no warranty hotline. There's no annual service call. There's a shelf, a shed, and a man who shows up on the first Sunday of every month. That's the whole architecture. It fits on a napkin too. Now you ought to know what this kind of bank will and won't do, because I won't sell you a thing I haven't sat with. A setup like that, sized to 1 solar panel and 12 cells, carries a household's essential loads. Lights, freezer, well pump, furnace blower, a radio, a kitchen outlet for the coffee pot in the morning. It will not run a central air conditioner. It will not run an electric range at supper time. For those, you keep the line from the pole. But for the things that matter when the line goes down, the things that keep a family warm and fed and reading by lamplight, it does the work, and it does it quiet, and it does it for decades. So ask yourself plainly, before you click off, the last time the power went out at your place, how long was it, what season, and what did you wish you'd had ready? Tell me down below. I read everyone. If your road is the kind where the lines come down in every storm, you're not alone. And you're not crazy for thinking there ought to be a better way. There is. It's old, it's heavy, it's plain. It sits in a shed and hums, and it doesn't ask anything of you but a Sunday. Next time, we're standing on a porch at dusk, watching a small clay pot smolder. $3. No spray. Not one mosquito left by the time the iced tea is gone. I'll show you what's in the pot. Until then, keep your hands busy and your lights your own.